Provincetown was a very vibrant arts community in the 1950s and 60s. So when Frankenthaler came there, she joined a very active artist community. We wanted to show a real focus on the work that she made at that time, but also speak to how this experience informed her art more generally.
The idea for the exhibition came about 6 years ago when I had curated a show of my father's work in Provincetown. Afterwards, I said to the director of the museum, well, we now have to do Helen Frankenthaler. We were interested in creating a show that would emphasize place and how place would impact an artist's work.
Provincetown finds its way into Helen Frankenthaler's paintings in a variety of different ways. She was a person that took cues from her surroundings, always. The selection of works to be included in the exhibition started with the time period when Frankenthaler was actually residing in Provincetown, from the late 50s until the end of the 60s. And we also decided to include works from 1950, when Frankenthaler studied for a short period of time with Hans Hofmann. She stayed in Provincetown for only 3 weeks during her summer study, but she painted quite a few works there that range from figure studies drawn from a model to more abstracted images of the beachfront and the bay, and we decided to include some of those in the exhibition. But the show really centers on the 1960s because that was the decade when she and her then husband Robert Motherwell spent parts or entire summers in Provincetown. At the parish, we had the opportunity to include a number of larger pieces that were not able to be included in the Provincetown venue. So we're delighted to be able to include some of the later works that Frankenthaler painted, including a work from the Foundation's collection called Beach Scene, which is quite formidable. Another one from our collection called Provincetown 1, which is an extraordinary painting from that period when Helen was concentrating on geometries and how to work with a geometric framework as a structure in her art. There are also some loans from institutions, including the Hirshhorn, which is lending Indian Summer, and the Whitney Museum of American Art, which is lending Flood, and private collectors who are lending paintings, including Orange Breaking Through. We felt there were a number of interesting aspects of Helen Frankenthaler's life that could be brought to light in the exhibition. And one of those was the relationship between her studio practice, her daily practice, and her daily life. And we wanted to present a picture of Frankenthaler as a whole person, somebody who spent summers in a place where she worked very hard and maintained a steady flow of art making, but also was surrounded by family and friends.
My fondest memory of being in Provincetown with my father and Helen really has to do a lot with Helen's personality, because Helen had this wonderful joie de vivre, and she was somebody who loved to have fun. She had this wonderful little Fiat car that had wicker seats and a blue canvas top. She would take us to the hotel nearby where we would go swimming in the pool. It was such a respite from the crazy schedule of the New York world.
Frankenthaler once said, "My work is full of climates, abstract climates, and not nature per se, but a feeling, and a feeling of an order that is associated with nature." Frankenthaler's statement was very important for our understanding of how the paintings made in Provincetown reflected in some way aspects of the environment in which they were painted. For Frankenthaler, it was never a realistic depiction of a place or a landscape or an environment. It always had something to do with feeling, with mood, with atmosphere, with some sort of sensibility that would resonate from a place. And that was the way in which identifiable characteristics from a particular environment permeated her art.